Well, people, I hope you are ready for another one because I got one here for you. This build is going to be for 4 Soundqubed HDS 3.2s. You heard me right. If you followed along on the channel for many years, or you just stopped by to check me out, I sure appreciate your loyalty and your patience with me and your support. And if you can see that glue squeezing out through the sides, it's what I call 100% glue coverage. I'm real big on that to ensure a good solid bond of these two pieces of 3/4 inch MDF. Spacing on the screws is usually 3 to 4 inches, starting with 2 inches from the inside, from the outside edge, just to minimize splitting of the wood. Steady walking around, adding on the side piece here, repeating the process, glue bottle in the middle just to give you an idea of the size of this box. This box is going in a 2002 Tahoe, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm steadily walking around it, adding that coverage. Adjustable clamps are a tremendous help when you're by yourself. It's almost like having a guy there helping you assemble everything. Makes it a lot easier. Standing up on end, getting a different perspective, getting ready to start lining out for these ports. And here I'm using some scrap pieces. I'm going to thicken up and to make the inside port edges rigid by adding that extra 1.5 inch piece, a 45-inch angle cut on it, and I'll put a round over on them. I like using scrap pieces for this just to minimize waste. You got them in there, ain't no point in them just sitting there gathering dust on you. You can see what I'm talking about there. Just that little added in, adds a little bit more rigidity to the port end just because of the overall size and height of the pieces. Once I hit it with the round over, then I hand sand them with some 80 grit sandpaper to try to get that final touch, get it as smooth as I can. Here I set the port pieces in place, outline them, and pre-drill them from the bottom down. That way I can ensure that my screws do not miss. That board piece there is going to add as extra middle support as I put these pieces in because I can't get my clamps across the middle. And you can see it here, what I'm talking about. Just got to get creative sometimes. Screw placement, shot from the bottom. You can see the actual height and length. These are some massive port openings here. I think it was like 13 inches across, if I'm not mistaken. He said he wanted them to breathe. First time he had a box this size with this type of port in it. I built a box more in the past at 218s, but nothing of this mass. Again, put some 45s in place, pull them from the scrapyard. Outline the pencil marks so I'll know that my screws are long enough to go through the material, but not all the way through to stick to the back of the box. What the 45s are doing is just minimizing air turbulence and getting the airflow smooth in this enclosure. Now we'll turn our attention to some picture frame bracing. I love picture frame bracing because it ties all 4 walls together, top to bottom, the inside of the port, and the outside wall of the box. Like I said, you want your boxes to be, the more rigid, the more solidly sound and structural it is, the more efficient it'll be. You want your box to be an entity that does not move as these woofers get to jumping. Some scrap pieces, outlining everything, and you can see what I'm saying, picture frame. Route it out with the jigsaw, the rough pieces, the bigger pieces of the material. Then I shot the trim pieces in with some brad nails, put it on my flush trim bit, routing table, and just flushed everything out. And then there you have the picture frame. And I just duplicated that onto the second piece, repeated the process. And then we'll go ahead and do some roundovers on the inside edges again. Minimizing air turbulence is what you want to do. That's the whole key to a lot of this stuff when you're doing bracing, anything on the inside. Added some pocket hole screws to the side that's on the port side because I don't want to put screws from the inside of the port shooting into the picture frame, just so I don't have to putty them up, wood filler. Just it equalizes, it minimizes more work on my end. Got them all secured in place, and the box is getting more and more solid with each piece I put on there, but I'm not adding a lot of displacement to this enclosure by doing it this way. Trying to keep the displacement down so I can keep my airspace up to where I need it to be. Coming along nicely. Now I'll start marking out for the speaker terminals. Like I said earlier, when I did the box for the 18s for the customer, he liked that because we use bolts and butterfly nuts and stuff like that versus push terminals or the high-end terminals. It's cleaner, it's less expensive, and plus I add strength to the back wall by adding these pieces in place, cutting the 45s on it. Again, airflow. So it serves two purposes for these terminals. You can see what I'm talking about there. This is an overall clean basic box. Now I'll get ready to start adding. I think, yeah, we're gonna put the top piece on now. Did the glue coverage. Getting creative with the clamps because the clamps aren't wide enough, so I doubled up on one of them. I'm marking out my areas for the inside pieces where I got all my boards, my ports and stuff like that. But the secondary piece on top, grid locked it just for screw placement. Again, he's not gonna wrap it, so I'm gonna wood fill all the screw holes, and I want to keep them all symmetrical. Once I did that, removed it, flush trimmed the top piece, get all my edges smooth and even, added that glue coverage, and then I screwed and applied the second baffle to this one. Didn't want to do a flush trim, he just wanted that secondary baffle on this enclosure. These pieces, I flipped the box upside down. I'm adding my trim pieces on the bottom, 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch trim pieces. The reason why is because a lot of guys will double the baffle up top and the bottom piece is just a single layer. And that look always reminds me of the guys that go into the gym and it's never leg day. So to minimize that and stop that look, add a trim piece on the bottom so the thickness is the same as the top and the bottom. Center piece there is running along where the port is, just add and support, again, because it's going to be lifted off the ground. Found my pivot hose for the 4 subwoofers, did some final measuring just to make sure where I'm at. Got my perfect circle jig in place, pivoted it, did some scribe marks to see what screws I got to remove before I actually cut it on and start cutting these out. Once I did that, we'll go ahead and drop these holes on you. And took my that 80 grit sandpaper by hand, just kind of knocked off the bottom edges, get it all smooth, how it's supposed to look. And then I just started the sanding process. If you're curious on what sander I use or what you would recommend or what you would like to use, the orbital sander. You can never go wrong with these. You see these edges, you see these overhangs, they're not edited, it's the same piece before and after. Orbital sander, I stand by them all day long. 80 grit sandpaper, 60 grit, 100 grit, but my go-to is 80 grit, and it does amazingly. But you see with the screwing and the glue, you don't have any gappage in there after the fact. Now I'll go ahead and mix up my own wood filler so we can fill in all these holes, and I'll do it in 2 and 3 stages because you'll get shrinkage on a lot of these holes. So I have to put a section on, let it dry, sand it, come back, mark my areas where it drew in where it had a shrinkage, and I'll apply another layer. And I had to do that 2 or 3 different times depending on the temperature, the time, other things I was going on, if I mixed it too light or too heavy. And as you can see here, this is what I'm walking around showing you. First layer is sanded off. Some areas come out smooth, some areas don't, and you can see. I'll let you look for yourself and be the own judge on that, but you'll see drawback, and then sometimes you won't. I like the discolor, excuse me, whenever I mix my wood filler to try to get a little transition of color. So I'll mix in some darker shavings just to give it a darker look. And again, it adds to that whenever you pre-mark your areas and your holes and your screw placement. It just adds a little touch to it, a little subtle touch. Just little tricks of the trade, things I like to do. And again, just going back, repeating what I just spoke on, going back sanding, resanding, applying certain gappage in the bottom pieces and stuff like that, the trim pieces that didn't pull together, and just go back and add that wood filler in those places. It's never going to be perfect, but you can do the best you can with what you got, and you just go from there. And the thing with when this 3/4 inch or this MDF, it's real touching. If you touch it, you just mark it up with your fingers, oily. The quick way to get that off of there is just sand it back down. You can just get some sandpaper, knock that off of there to get those edges off, the oily touch for fingertips and fingerprint magnet. But it's coming along nice, and you can see that extra layer top and bottom, how it changes it. It makes it look as solid as top as the bottom. They match. I'm all about being symmetrical. And that's some HDS 3.2s, Soundqubed. These subwoofers perform. I've ran their subs, their amps, their speakers, crossovers, all that stuff. I love their products. Not backed by their products, but you know, it's they make good stuff. That's all I can say. Pre-drilling my holes. I always try to kick them in, just so the screws are grabbing more meat as they're going down. You can see there, that's kind of the angles that I drill all my holes away from the circle. Pre-marked for the positives and negatives on the terminals. As you go in your visual of where you need to put your tape when I'm getting ready to paint the port. You don't have to paint the whole back side, only what you can see from the port opening. And that's what I'm drawing my lines there, showing that. So that's as far as I could see from the front side, looking all the way to the left and all the way to the right. Made my mark, and I'll mask it off. Front end, I always try to round the corners again, just to give it a smoother look versus hard, crispy edges. Masked everything off to minimize overspray. Again, the box isn't going to be wrapped. I'm just walking you through what I just explained here. And just regular masking tape and make sure it's all taped off and sealed. All the edges, double checking myself, making sure I didn't miss anything. I didn't miss a sanding spot, or there's dirt in there that the vacuum didn't get out of with the air hose. Because I'm going to lay this paint down. I always use aerosol paint. Branding, I can't even remember the brands that I use. I just like the nozzle that has the fan head on it. That's the only ones that I use. Here I'm showing you just the views. That's all you paint is what you can see. Just keep your costs down. Put a couple of layers of primer down, sand between each coat. There you go, Scotch-Brite. I think it's just what I had around the shop. You know, even idea how big that port is. That's me getting out that sucker with no problem. But I had to get off in there. I couldn't flip it and put it on the table by myself on the floor just to get down there. So I just had to climb in that bad boy. But this is one big box. It was all there. Got my goggles on, you know, safety first. I don't want to get no debris in my eye. Put a brother down. But yeah, just double checking myself. Flashlight. Vacuumed everything out and then applying the first layer of paint. He wanted to get a paint that matched the exterior color of his vehicle. So that'll give you an idea what the truck looks like. And here, I think we did like 4 layers, just sanding and paint. Sanding and paint, going back, taking my time. For the reveal. Now here, I messed up. I used the wrong, instead of using masking tape, I should have used a different style tape because I had bleed through and it bled past the tape onto the wood. I've done it in the past and I forgot this for some reason this time. So as I was pulling it, I saw it and instantly got mad because I knew what I had to do. And so I was gonna have to do it later, but I had to do it. You'll see it, I'll come back to that here in a second. Now, we'll go ahead and wire these up just to get an idea, show you how we're going to wire everything up. He's going to run I think he had a Soundqubed 6K is what he was running with these. Here's some 12 gauge speaker wire. And the terminals are big enough where I can pass the whole wire through the jacket, through the push terminal, versus twisting wires together and doing them like that. Just pass them all the way through, minimizing cuts. I like them when they're like that. It's just a cleaner look. It makes it a lot easier. You can just run one continuous wire, split them, use an X-Acto knife, trim the jacket off, crimped and soldered, heat shrinked each end that goes to the terminal cups in place. Here I am changing or fixing my mistake. So masked everything off. Now I'll do the second reveal, and I found some other areas where I had drawback on the screw and just addressing those as I'm going through it. But that coat, that paint is on there. It's just that dust after sanding. You can see I'm still doing some sand. It's still a little dusty, but it's gonna clean up. It'll clean up. Don't worry about it. It'll clean up. But that's it. Complete. Finished. This mammoth of a box. Demos, demos on Instagram. I don't do demos on here for copyright issues. But go to my Instagram, there's demos of this thing playing, vocals that we put off in there. I put external, or added some speakers, and you see the jacks under the table. Hey, this thing ain't finna crash on me. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this one, as well as the previous ones, and more to come. he came by and went on slid on in there. You get that full visual. I try to keep all my boxes even or below the window line as possible. I just love that look. It's a much cleaner look for me. Thanks for watching, as always, and stay tuned for the next one.